Chapter 8. As she quietly shut the front door behind her, Lyra perked her ears to try and find out what state her party was in. She expected to hear talking and laughter, but instead only the ticking of the hallway clock greeted her. That was either a good sign or a really bad one. She walked up to the hallway cabinet and returned the unused pouch of rainy day bits, making sure to first remove the wooden spoon. Stepping lightly, she approached the door to the living room and peeked inside. To Lyra's relief, no pony was present. So that meant there was about a 90% chance that the guests just hadn't arrived yet, and only 10% chance they'd been so disgusted by the lack of candy that they had stormed out mere moments after stepping through the door. Still, only one way to find out. "Bonbon, I'm home!" A clatter came from the kitchen that sounded like a plate being set a little too hard on a table. This was followed by the sound of rapidly approaching hooves on tile. Bonbon stuck her head out of the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide. Upon seeing Lyra, she smiled and stepped into the hallway. She wore the black cloak from her Nightmare Night costume, though her pointy witch's hat was missing. "Lyra, you were gone so long, I was starting to worry something happened." "Sorry," Lyra said sheepishly. "I would have been back sooner, but there was this huge cart wreck in the town square. Apparently the Pegasus who was pulling its harness snapped. Don't worry, no pony got hurt, but there was a ton of ponies standing around gawking." Bonbon smirked and said, "Were you one of the gawkers?" "Anyway," Lyra said, quickly changing the topic, she held up the bowl of candy with her magic. "Ta-da! Lyra, you did it!" Lyra grinned, basking in the glory of her accomplishment. "Although—" Lyra's grin faltered somewhat. Bonbon shook her head. "I really do need to apologize to you." Lyra blinked. "Huh?" She started having a dread suspicion that she was about to hear something she didn't like. "After you were gone for a while and the cooking settled down, I started thinking that maybe I was too hard on you. As I got closer and closer to the party starting, I realized that I would much rather have had you here than the candy. But by then it was too late to go look for you, so I'm sorry." Bonbon smiled. "I'm happy that you managed to find some candy, but I'm happier that you made it back in time." "Oh, Lyra felt a blush coming on. "Thanks." "I also see you found my spoon," Bonbon said, nodding toward it floating alongside the bowl. "Oh, Lyra began heading toward the living room. "Yeah, it's a crazy story, but don't worry, I recovered it and brought it back safe and sound." Once in the living room, Lyra walked up to the glass bowl she had pilfered of candy earlier and dumped the fresh bowl into it. When she had finished, she turned towards Bonbon. "Taffy, lollipops, caramels, and jawbreakers may not be as special as your homemade candy, but it should work for tonight." Bonbon nodded. "Yes, they'll work fine. You do know you're going to have to tell me about today. I have a feeling you've had quite an adventure." Lyra rolled her eyes and laughed. "That's putting it lightly. We don't have time before the party, but the abridged version is that you were right. Every store was sold out of candy, including Sugar Cube Corner. Luckily, Pinkie agreed to share some of her candy with me if I agreed to test their haunted house." Seeing Bonbon's eyes widen, Lyra decided to milk the story for all it was worth. "Now, I know how important getting this candy was, so the only thing I could do was to get over my traumatic full-head experience, realize that even if ghosts aren't real, they can still be scary, and then bravely face the horrors, laughing and screaming all the way." Before Bonbon could reply, seeing how amazingly impressed she was, Lyra's excitement got the better of her and she blurted out, "We have to be the first in line tomorrow night. That haunted house was so cool, and it isn't even finished yet. There's this... Well, I can't spoil it, but the ending is crazy. After all that scary stuff, there's a slide all the way from Sugar Cube Corner's roof down to this vat filled with slime that's actually green jelly. At least I think it was jelly. Well, it tasted like apples, whatever it was." Bonbon giggled and shook her head. "Well, I'm glad you were able to start enjoying haunted houses. I can't claim to have had any life-changing experiences today, but I did finish all the food. The banana bread is sliced, the soup is chilled, and the sweet potatoes are ooey and gooey and just being kept warm in the oven." "Chilled soup?" Lyra asked, hoping she had only misheard. "It's gazpacho. It's supposed to be served cold. Please at least try some of it as is before you heat it up." Still trying to wrap her mind around cold soup, Lyra just pressed her lips together and nodded. "I do have to say that I love what you did with the decorations," Bonbon said, slowly spinning around to take in the room, "although you did go a little heavy on the cobwebs." Lyra looked around at the web-covered lamps, end tables, and curtains. "Wow, those little guys were busy while I was gone." "Huh?" Then, Lyra noticed the plate on the table filled with perfectly cut squares of baking deliciousness. She gasped and looked at Bonbon, unable to keep the eager excitedness from her eyes. "Go ahead," Bonbon said, nodding at the cinnamon surprise brownies. "You've more than earned it." Slowly, Lyra lifted a brownie with her magic. As it came closer to her mouth, she could smell the array of spices that would elevate the chocolate to a whole new level. She bit down, and for that moment her taste buds knew only bliss. "Oh," Lyra said with her mouth full, "they get better every time you make them." As much as she didn't want to, she had to swallow before she choked on her own saliva. Thankfully, there was plenty more brownie to go. You really need to tell me what the surprise is in these someday. Bonbon gasped and looked away. She chewed her lip while rubbing one foreleg with the other. The surprise? Well, you worked so hard today. It's, the flour. It's a starch made from a certain root. She squealed a bit and shook her head. I mean, you like them, so I shouldn't say more. Lyra laughed. Okay. You don't have to tell me. Honestly, if I knew how to make them, they'd probably not be as special anymore. Whatever reply Bonbon was about to make, I cut off as a knock sounded from the front door. Oh, they're here, Bonbon said. A little late, but now the party can begin. They were probably looking at the same cart wreck I was. I mean, the same one I saw earlier, but passed by quickly because I wasn't lollygagging. Bonbon hummed and smiled, then started walking towards the door. I'll go greet them, she said. That'll give you time to get into your costume. A sinking sensation came over Lyra and she had to lick her suddenly dry lips. Costume? Lyra asked weakly. Bonbon nearly stumbled as she turned around. Her eyes darted about as her mouth tried to form words. In this situation, Lyra knew what she had to do. Laugh like she had never laughed before. Sorry, Lyra said between giggles. I couldn't resist. I'll go put it on. Giggling as well, Bonbon held a hoof to her chest. Another knock came from the door. She smiled once more at Lyra before leaving the room. Lyra made her way out the back of the living room and further into the house. She figured she had about 5 minutes to come up with, create, and put on a costume before Bonbon would come check on her. A toilet paper mummy would work, but Lyra wore that costume last year. This year, she decided she was in the mood to go as a bedsheet ghost. Taking another bite from her brownie, Lyra knew this was the start of the best nightmare night ever.